Welcome back, everybody, to Toulas Tips for Caregivers. If you've just joined me today, my guest is elder law attorney Robert Morgan, and he has just a wealth of experience in working with seniors and with their caregivers and helping them prepare for some of the things that they're going to need to face in the future, for the transitions as a senior gets older, and putting some of the right documents in place. Robert, tell me a little bit more about the Alzheimer's new program, the Alzheimer's Association's new program for financial legal planning.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for letting me. It's intended to help caregivers and those assisting those with dementia or disabilities and help reduce it helps stress reduction, which again, it sounds like a cliche because I'm sure that that's constantly spoken about on the show, but it is the program pretty much consists of having meetings in the community, which are put on by the Alzheimer's Association. These are things that were on the Alzheimer's Association's website. You can get that from calling the actual Alzheimer's Association, which their local number is 904-281-9077.
Right.
And they can tell you when they're going to have one of these coming up. But they've been going all over. Since Jacksonville is so large geographically, you just can't say we're just going to have one meeting, everyone show up at the library.
No.
So
you've got to go to your audience
right.
here.
And we've done one on North Side, and then we've also done a couple of others and had them scheduled, and I know they are pre-scheduled, so I know calling up the association, they could tell you when there's going to be another one of these. But the gist of the program is really more handout information, go through a PowerPoint, very detailed, short though, PowerPoint, so there's really a lot of time for questions.
That's good. Because
that's really what we understand. We know that everyone's got questions. Everyone
right.
has their own specific information. And then what we also do is we stand around and wait after a presentation is done, because we know everyone's they don't want to just address their personal questions in front of a group of people.
Sure.
So you can sit there, and we can also at the same time go through and just discuss in general what the facts are and maybe what kind of planning or what might be unique to your circumstance, what can be done, or where a place to start might be to get some information or some assistance.
So you're a referral source too.
Yes.
In that regard.
Yes, ma'am.
Because there's just so much that a person needs to know, and I like what Representative Steve Wise used to say, nobody can know everything about everything.
Yes.
And even us as social workers, me as a social worker rather, I can't, but I know where to look to find resources for people, and I know you do too. Medicare, Medicaid, even that is so confusing.
Yeah, it is, and that's one of the things. The handout actually goes through definitions of different terminology, and they just explain the difference, for example, from the Social Security programs of Medicare and Medicaid, and then the sub-parts of those,
right.
which have to do with long-term care and waiver programs so that people can stay at home versus having to age in a nursing facility, for example.
And you know what? That's something maybe we'll talk about a little bit right now, because again, we're talking this morning about the fact that we do want to keep our loved ones in the home for as long as possible. Let's talk about the Medicaid Waiver Program. Are you familiar enough to touch on that a little bit?
Just enough to know at this point that we have a waiver program in Florida. It's called Assisted Living Waiver,
mm-hmm.
and there's also, not to be confused with what's also referred to as a diversion program.
Right.
The in-home diversion program and the waiver program, both unfortunately because of the economic situation we have, are woefully underfunded. So it's very
right.
difficult to get people into those programs right now. There's actually waiting lists. But when those programs are funded, and a lot of that has to do again with it's Tallahassee. I mean, it's
right.
the state.
They make the decisions.
Right. It's where they're going to decide where the funding goes.
Right.
But the idea of having these waiver programs in place are fabulous because they do assist in keeping people at home. The requirements, the financial and income requirements are very similar to those of any other Medicaid program. So if you qualify for an in-home waiver or diversion program, typically the requirements are the same. So as a person ages and may need more care, you don't have to do more work in order to get somebody qualified.
No more applications necessarily.
Well, you may have to apply just depending on, again, the bureaucracy, but you're going to already have had the paperwork done the first time.
And you will have done the due diligence, the research to figure out where you are eligible or not, since they're
Correct.
the same.
And the
Gotcha.
terminology, a lot of it's all the same.
Yeah, because I know that institutional or long-term care Medicaid probably has those same financial requirements. And if I remember correctly, and this is stretching me a little bit today, but the income requirements for institutional Medicaid for nursing home placement it's right around $2,100 a month.
That's correct. But Florida has an income cap, so we're one of a minority of states that does that. And all that really means is that if somebody who's applying for long-term care benefits, if they have more than, say, $2,200, then you have to do something called a qualified income trust.
Right.
And so it's just a hurdle. It doesn't prevent you, it's not a wall from being able to get benefits, but it does cause a potential 1 or 2 month delay to get things done correctly. Yes.
But it's a way of protecting some of those assets or that income so that you will still have it for other needs and still be eligible for Medicaid.
There are ways to do things like that, yes.
Yes.
That, again, all within the rules. I mean,
All
we're
within
talking
right.
conservative, nothing off the wall here. That's all correct.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, but I do love it that we have programs like that in place, including for assisted living. The Medicaid Waiver Program does pay some dollars to assisted living facilities, which is a higher level of care, but still not quite nursing home for those people who can
Oh, that's right.
live there.
Look, again, there's nothing better. I mean, I think, again, we've spoken earlier about I had back surgery, and there was nothing worse than sitting in the hospital bed when, in fact, I could have been sitting at home, and even though the dog may have jumped on me and everything else, it was more enjoyable for me to be at home and be in a surrounding where I was familiar than it was to be in more of an institutional setting where I just felt like I was at everybody else's,
Whim.
Exactly.
You are, pretty much. We're in your own home, obviously. You are your master.
Well, you hope. I mean, I don't know if my wife listening, I know that she didn't always listen to the bell when it rang, but I tried, so.
Oh, we had a bell.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a whole different show for a whole different time.
Okay, I got you on that one, but I do understand what you're saying because, nursing homes most certainly have their place, and one of my sponsors is Livy Healthcare, and they've got 3 beautiful facilities here in our area. And when it's time, and that's a difficult transition for a lot of folks, but it's also a discussion again that needs to be had.
Yes.
And that there you're going back to what are some of the documents we need to be looking at.
Yeah. Well, again, one of the main document that you really need to have, and what is stressed by, again, in this program with the Alzheimer's Association, even going back to that, is the durable power of attorney. And these are documents that are very important, mainly because the law just changed significantly back in October of last year.
Explain that. What happened?
Sure. The Florida Banking Association and some other groups were having difficulty because all of a sudden people had had powers of attorneys for years, but no one ever used them until a crisis situation arose. Then there started becoming sort of what I refer to as greed factor cases, where you would end up having people going into the bank and saying, here, I'm just going to take out mom's money. And the banks were getting nervous about just letting somebody with a piece of paper that they've never seen who comes in from out of town to somehow they're going to save the day and just take all of mom's money. So more restrictions were placed on these documents and the use of them. And now to actually sign a power of attorney is, quite honestly, it's not something that you can just get off the internet. I actually saw one recently where somebody did get one off of one of the typically advertised internet sites, and it didn't comply with Florida's new law. Florida's new law is unique. I warn all the listeners, and it is very unique because it was specifically set up to comply with, like I said, a lot of Florida issues that are unique to Florida because we have such an older population and people being so spread out. You have a lot of people coming in from out of state. So we wanted to have a document. I didn't necessarily agree with it, but the gist of it was that the document would end up having certain initialing on it, and certain powers have to be placed into the document in order for the power of attorney to have validity, or at least to be enforceable.
So they're making it a little bit more difficult to get. They're really making sure that this person
Right, yes, and in fact, it requires just, again, it's an extra step of pre-planning to make
Right.
sure that that document, the parent's document, they may have a power of attorney, but you need to check to make sure that it's now consistent with the newer law, so you don't get into this sort of void of where you have a legitimately valid power of attorney, but it doesn't meet with the policies and procedures of a financial institution, and so what do? You know,
Yeah.
if you need to get something done right away, you need something right away, you don't want to wait and have a legal fight.
Right.
And I know my clients don't want to watch me be Perry Mason when I go up and try to tell them I'll go fight them in the Supreme Court if I have to.
Yeah.
It's not worth all of it, and so you want to try to find the course of least resistance, and typically that is done by having documents drawn up that are in compliance with the law.
With the latest laws. I just, there's a lot to keep on top of.
Yes, it gives me a headache.
Kind of almost headaching just to even listen about. But you know what, folks? That's why you need a good elder law attorney. Don't go to the internet to do some of these things. You want the best protection for your loved one and for yourself as you're caring for them. So if you've got parents that are aging and you know that you're going to be in that situation, please seek out a good elder law attorney. You are listening to Toula's Tips for Caregivers on Talk Radio 600 WBOB. Please stay tuned. We've got lots of other things to tell you about, as well as some great gift certificates to give away.